users is a bit depressing because you don't know what to do. There are no windows. In Windows there are some windows that some menus that you can use, but really they are not very helpful. Okay? So don't be concerned. You just install it, and on Friday I will explain to you the basics, and it's basically easy. Okay. Now, I'm not giving homework to do during my lectures, just these, but they are not compulsory, so I don't call these exercises homework. I'm not collecting periodical homework during the lectures. So let's say that my teaching method is more close to the Italian one than the UK or American one, where there is a continuous verification of the learning achievements. I prefer not, because this is also my experience. I think it's a good thing to give to the students the independence of organizing their time rather than suggesting, you know, a tight schedule and deadlines, continuous deadlines. And also, I recognize that my subject is not the most difficult one that you have in this degree program. Probably it's not the easier one either, but it's not a very difficult subject. So I don't think it's a good idea to make it easy with this subject with you know, deadlines, continuous deadlines. And of course I'm willing to listen to you very much. So if you have any suggestion, which of course will apply the next year, or may apply even this year if they are suggestions related to something that I can change, you are very much welcome to talk with me. I very much value your suggestions. This is not rhetoric, it's true, I tell you. And so if you have, for instance, very often I get the complaint that I speak too quickly, because you see, I tend to speak quickly, even if my English is not perfect, but it's not good, let's say. But even in English I try, you know, I don't realize it. I tend to speak very quickly. So if you have this problem, just tell me, even during a lecture. And this is the best way to do and to go, because you know, it wouldn't be a good thing if you had some reason for being disappointed by me and you don't tell anything, and at the end of the year you just fill in the questionnaire that you are not happy. And this is not what is useful for you. Of course, you can write in the questionnaire that you are not happy, but it's better if you tell me in advance, because I can, you know, correct my behavior accordingly. And therefore, please don't be concerned. If you feel that you are not comfortable to speak in public, you can ask an appointment to me, and then you can tell me directly, or whatever. Okay? But just let me know. Now, let me give some details on the final examination, because I have a slide later with the program, the program of the course, and I will comment on the program later. But now I would like to dedicate some minutes to the final examination. And the final examination is an oral exercise, is an oral exam. And, but it may happen, especially when in the first call, it may happen that I make the exam to two students at the same time. First of all, I make the exams myself. I don't ask my co-workers to help me, unless something really strange happens. So usually I make the exams myself, because I think it's better for me. I don't have so many students, and it's better for me. My evaluation becomes more, you know, more coherent. But it may happen that I make the exam to two students at the same time. And if this is the case, I ask, of course, and I rotate during the exam, I ask one question to be completed in a written form. So the question is the same. It's not really an exercise that I suggest. The question is the same, but I ask the student to write down. And so I tell this because sometimes some students say, look, you said that the exam is oral, and instead you are asking me to write. So I consider that it's still an oral exam, because, you know, a written examination is something different. You have 2 hours for completing an exercise, and after 2 hours, the sheet is got by the professor, and that's it. In this case, it's a different story. If you want to ask something while you're writing, you can ask for clarification, and then later I discuss with the students what it's written on the sheet. Usually my exam is short, typically 20 to 30 minutes, and the first question usually is one of the questions, let's say, usually it's the first. It's a descriptive, what I call a descriptive question, meaning that it's a question that has not an immediate reply, but it is a question that requires you to speak in order to clarify the context, to give some preliminary background, and this allows me to see if you can speak well, not necessarily in English, because the exam, if you are from Italy, you can even choose to get the exam directly taken. But the ability to speak is something that, in my opinion, is independent of the language in which one speaks. Of course, the language has an influence, but the ability to organize a speech in a coherent way is something that, in my opinion, is general. And therefore, for me, it is important. So for me, it's important not just that you remember everything, but it's also important that you are able to explain. And as I said, this is, for me, it's something that it's part of the evaluation. Not really a big part. Namely, if you know everything and you speak very bad, you don't get 25, you get 28. Okay? But sometimes it happened to me that the students complained because they said, look, I replied to all your questions and you proposed to me 28. Why? Because I think that your ability to speak is not at the level of 30. And I understand this is subjective, but, you know, it's normal. So pay attention also in the way you speak. And this is not just finalized with the exam. It's very important in all your career to speak. And if you speak well, you have much more opportunities. So it's important that you train to speak well. Speaking well means, as I said, to be able to organize the speech in a coherent way. It doesn't mean that you should be relaxed. It's not necessary. You could also be nervous. This is not a problem. But the problem is if you are not coherent, if the person with whom you are speaking doesn't understand well, because you are not coherent, because you don't follow a clear train of thoughts. So this is a limitation, and it's something that can be learned, and you should start learning now. And therefore, as I said, for me it's important. And so this is the reason why I at least ask one question where you're allowed to speak, and I listen. And I just try to assess your ability to speak. The other questions usually are more immediate questions. And sometimes I ask definitions, like what is a catchment? What is a river flow? And here the reply is very quick, it's 5 seconds. And so the overall duration of the exams is, as I said, between 20 minutes and half an hour. Usually I give the laude to about from 5 to 10% of the students. And for me, to get the laude means that you did a fantastic exam, but more than that. The laude for me is to be reserved to an extraordinary capability to speak and or some clear proof that you went beyond what I said. So if I realize that you took the time to read a paper that you find on the web because you thought that it was relevant to what I talked in the lecture, so this is for me a very good sign. Or sometimes I suggest to you some papers, like, you know, there is this paper linked here, you don't need to read it. I say, which is true. But if I notice that you made an effort to read everything that I suggested, this is something that goes beyond, in my view, to the normal duties. And therefore, this is one reason that could bring me to give to you the laude. And the laude is clear for the foreign people what is, yeah, okay. And usually I don't reject many students, but sometimes it happens. And I realize that for the fact that I am making an effort to be clear, and for the fact that At the end, I don't have many students, and so the number of rejected students is not so relevant. I realized that sometimes there were, in some years, students that got convinced that my exam, it was easy. This is, I think, this is a bad feeling, not because of me, but because I don't think it's a good way to approach an exam to get convinced that it's very easy. So if I realize that the approach is of this kind, I don't get a good feeling. But still, I should say that the number of rejected students is quite low. You will see why, it's clear. Now, usually I make a lot of calls for the exams. The first call is soon after, is when you decide, but typically is soon after the end of the lectures, let's say after 1 week. And as I said, I'm willing to make the exam in May. If I'm able to finish by May 15, for instance, I could make a first appeal on May 22nd, which means that I cannot register the exam officially, because you know that you are allowed to take an exam only after the end of the lectures. And therefore, if we decide to have an exam before, we will need to make it informally, which means that you cannot subscribe through Alma Esami, and it means that you trust me, because I will be able to register the exam only after June 6th. So if we have the exam on May 22nd, I will tell you, okay, June 7 you will get the exam registered, and in the date of June 7. So I cannot absolutely skip this, okay? But I'm willing to do that. And of course, you have to trust me, but it's not really a matter of trusting. It's a matter of risking something, because I always tell the students to ask this, because sometimes some students ask me to make the exam in March. And they say, I'm willing to study all your notes until the end of the course, and if you could allow me to take the exam in March. Usually I say no, but there is also one thing that I say, that this is risky, because you know, if I take a commitment to register an exam after 1 year, I'm exaggerating, it's not a good thing for you, because something may happen, whatever, okay? Like I lose my memory, or let me be clear, it's a risk. But for a couple of weeks, I think it's not a big risk. So I will try to stay safe at home for the 2 weeks if we decide to follow this way. In any case, after the first call, which, as I said, I will decide with you, and I propose to you to decide later on, because it's better to see how the course evolves. But if you have some strict requirements, we may decide a date even now, even right now. After the first call, usually after 2 weeks, I make a second call, and after 2 weeks, another call. Which means that in 1 month after the end of the lecture, you will have 3 calls. After that, usually I issue a call every month, even during the teaching period, because you know I don't think it's a problem. For me, it's not, and therefore, I also say to students that if you have personal reasons, I can make any extra call that you wish. Of course, you shouldn't exaggerate much. So if any of you ask me to make the exam in a different date, I say no, this is not possible. But if you have a particular reason, like the plane that is leaving, or the plane today, I made an exam just for Erasmus students because the plane landed yesterday, and therefore she said, look, I couldn't come before, okay, that's fine, no problem. And so basically, if you have any question, you can ask me, but what I propose to do is to wait a while, and mid of April we decide the dates, okay, mid of April, or when you ask me. But again, if you have a particular requirement now, we can decide a date even now, like June 10, I can decide now to make an exam. If you don't have any particular requirement, we can wait. Okay, let me say that when I teach, some details, when I teach, and I have 3 hours, usually I put the first 2 hours together and I teach 1 hour and a half. And then I stop a quarter of an hour, and then I move forward with the 3rd hour. The hours are 45 minutes. So what I propose to you on Monday is to meet at 4, I speak until 5:30, and then I stop until 5:45, and I move forward to 6:30. And so by 6:30 we finish, but this requires that you are here at 4. Okay? If you have anything against, just let me know. On Thursday morning we have 3 hours, same thing. We meet at 9:15, not 9, 9:15, because my train allows me to get here at about 10 to 9, and sometimes it is late, so 9 is too early. 9:15 to 10:45, and then from 11 to 11:45. On Friday morning, 9:15, 10:45. This would be my, which means that in 10 minutes before starting I make a break. What could I say more? Okay, let me say one more thing. First of all, I may remember some additional details which I may tell you later. One more detail is the final year project, and sometimes I would like to clarify from the beginning. And I am quite busy in these years with the coordination of the master degree program, so I would prefer not to get committed with final year projects. But if you have a strong interest for this topic, or if you have any problem to find an advisor for the final year project, I'm always willing to help you. So you understood my message. I would prefer not, but if you are really very interested in hydrology, then we can discuss on this. And there are many topics on which we could develop a final year project. I prefer hydrology. Hydrology is a form of modeling, something that you will see what is. Okay? Okay. Now, I think I didn't forget anything really important. And let's see if this is the YouTube page, and you see that there is a playlist that is still empty. Tomorrow you will find the lectures, today's lectures, and usually each lecture is split in several files, typically a couple of files per hour. This allows you also to get oriented better in the playlist. Let me see if I can. No, this is a previous website. Now, I am starting with the first file now, which is a PowerPoint presentation that you can find under Introduction to the course. Okay? And this is this one. So the name of the course is Advanced Hydrology and Water Resources Management. Basically, given your background, we should say that this is a course on hydrology and water resources management, because we cannot really start from common previous background. Some of you didn't take any hydrology, and therefore I have to start, let's say, from the beginning. But given that I know what is done in other hydrology courses that you took in some of your previous careers, I will try to minimize the overlaps, and I will try to, in a way, not to go fast, but to adopt a progress in introducing hydrology that takes into account that some of you already have some background. So, first of all, let me introduce there are some projectors that are really very... Okay, here it is. Okay, so what is water resources management? First of all, let me clarify that we use hydrology in our context to support water resources management. So when I'm teaching hydrology to you, I'm not teaching the broad field of hydrology. I'm teaching hydrology for water resources management. And so I think it's correct to start our introduction by defining what is water resources management. And basically a definition that is commonly adopted for water resources management is to define it as the discipline that is required to solve problems related to secure water for people. So you have to bring water to people, and you have problems in doing that. So water resources management is in charge of solving these problems. And why we have problems to bring water to people, to secure water to people? First of all, let me clarify that on the Earth we have enough water for everybody. If we consider the current population of the world, in principle we have enough water for everybody. Let me check the camera, yes, it's fine. The problem is that the water is not homogeneously distributed in space and not homogeneously distributed in time. So this is the reason for the problem in securing water for people. We have countries that have a surplus of water. We have countries that experience water shortage. We have countries experiencing water shortage only in some seasons, and in other seasons they have plenty of water. So the problem is to put a remedy to this uneven distribution. This is the reason for the problems. And sometimes the problems are very easy to solve, in other cases they are much complicated. But in principle, there is one first thing that I would like to say. Basically, in the vast majority of the cases, the solution is very simple. The problem is that you can't apply this solution for many reasons. So, water resources management is a discipline that is not really fully connected with engineering. Sometimes, as I said, the solutions are simple. They don't require the identification of a solution, don't require the experience of an engineer. The problems have other reasons for being there. Of course, we will focus on the engineering side. So during my course, I will focus on the engineering of water resources management. But you will see that the engineering part is quite limited in a context that is indeed very broad. In fact, and this is another important thing that you have to learn, water resources management is interdisciplinary. There are many and many disciplines connected with water resources management, and I will show you a slide in a few minutes summarizing some of the main disciplines. And let me anticipate that important disciplines are economics and politics. So water is the reason for many wars since the ancient history. There were a lot of wars caused by the struggle for water, and still is still the reason for wars. Let's think to Jordan and Palestine, for instance, or let's think to the conflicts between Turkey and Iraq, for using the water of the Tigris and the Euphrates. If you look at the history, you will see that many wars, and now in Egypt, they have strong conflicts in Egypt with Sudan, Ethiopia for using the water of the Nile. So it's a discipline that is a field that is typically interdisciplinary. As I said, we will focus on the engineering part of it, and therefore at the end of this class you will be aware of water resources issues at local and global scale, and you will be able to, in a quantitative manner, to quantify the availability of water resources. How much water is there? This is the basic question that we have to reply to, which may seem to you a very simple question, but indeed it's very complicated. If you go, for instance, and look to a river, like the Reno River here in Bologna, you go there over the bridge, and if somebody asks you, how many people can I make happy with this water? It's difficult to say, because you don't know how much water is there. And we will dedicate a consistent part of our subject and a lot of hours to the estimation of water resources, to reply to the question how much water is there. The question becomes even more complicated if you take your water from the underground. So you dig a well, and then how much water can I take from this well? Well is pozzo in Italian. How much water can I take from this well without depleting, without exhausting the water storage, the underground water storage? And then you will be able to provide solution to typical water resources problems found in practice. And the typical question that we will focus on is a question related to water shortage, because if you have plenty of water, there is no water resources management. You just take the water and use it. If you have plenty of water, water resources management doesn't exist. Water resources management is related to problems in securing water. So the typical question is, you have two users, one wants X water, the second one wants Y water, but X plus Y is more than the total water available. So you have to decide whether you make happy the first user or the second user, or make a compromise. This is basically our main problem. Even the most complicated problem in water resources management can be reconduced, can be linked to this very simple question, deciding water allocation. And in some cases, how to bring water there. Like I have the water here, but I need water 100 kilometers abroad. So what kind of means should I use to bring the water there? And this is typical engineering, because you have to decide between canals, pipes, or taking trucks and bring the water with the trucks, etc. This is basically water resources management, and we will focus, as I said, on the engineering, on the questions related to engineering. Let me see just to put the next one and then the break. Okay, this is, I would like just to discuss on this. This is my program, the program of the subject, which of course may change, but this is basically the skeleton. So first part of the course, introduction, definition, quantification of the water cycle, and practical problems. Quantification, yeah, quantification is not really very good wording. Let's say analysis of the water cycle. And quantification is related to assessment of water resources availability. And then I will illustrate a case study, because I want to start from a case study, and the case study is a case study that is not particularly concerning. It's related to the Emilia-Romagna region where we are. And I think I will illustrate this case study on Thursday. And then assessment of water resources availability. This is the first part of our course. The first part is assessment of water resources availability. And I will split this broad subject in sub-subjects. And the first one will be rainfall and off-modeling. We will see that one solution to the estimation of water resources is performing rainfall and off-modeling. I will provide the details later. And then, again, assessment of water resources availability, generation of synthetic hydrological variables. Because, as you will see, very often the main problem we have to deal with is lack of data. So you are, again, over a bridge and you look at a river, you don't have any measurement of river flow. You don't have any measurement that may help you to assess how much water is there, how deep is the river, how long is the high flow period for this river. You don't have any measurement. And this is a typical situation which occurs worldwide. If you look at rivers that are gauged, where you have measurement, they are like 0.001% of the total rivers that you can find in the world. So you have to find alternative ways of estimating water resources availability. Then I will pass to water resources management after about 40 hours. At 2/3 of the course, water resources management, decision theory, and decision under uncertainty. Decision theory because, as I said, water resources management at the end requires to take decisions. How much water I have to give to you and how much to you. And therefore, this requires the application of decision theory. Not because you don't understand your decision, because very often, not because you don't know how to decide, very often the solution is very clear. The problem is to explain to the people that this is the good solution. This is the big problem of water resources management. It becomes almost very close to social sciences. Your task is not just to decide, your task is to convince people that you took the right decision. The time in which decision was top-down in relation to social problems and in relation in particular to water is closed. Now we cannot just impose a decision. We have to convince people that the decision is correct. And therefore decision theory helps you to explain. Because it leads to an objective decision, decision theory leads to an objective decision, and objectivity is a necessary requirement when you speak with people. And then I will talk about climate change. Because, you know, this is a big issue. Meaning that today, when you make predictions for water resources management, the usual objection that people make is climate change, and climate change has an impact on water resources, a strong impact on water resources, and therefore the existence of this big question on climate change, because climate change is a scientific question, it's not a fact, or we will speak later on this, but the existence of this big question makes your task much more difficult, because, you know, you make all your assessment and then people say climate change. The problem is that climate change is not, up to now, not predictable. It's not predictable. Even if you listen to predictions for the future, to 2100, sorry, these predictions are uncertain. And therefore, you know, because it would be very easy if one told us that in 2050 we have 30% less of water in Italy, it's easy to devise a strategy to mitigate the impact. The problem is that this prediction doesn't exist. And therefore I will speak about climate change. And there are many sub-subjects that I will introduce here. Okay, so let me make a break, because this is, I forgot to give you my email, which I think you already know, but it's there, and also my phone number. And keep in mind that I am very often here, indeed, but very often I am out of my office, so the phone is not a good, the phone is not a good means to communicate with me. The email is much better, because unfortunately I read the email continuously, and very often if you write an email to me, I will reply in a few minutes. If I don't reply, it's just because I don't know what to reply to you, but if you are patient, in at most one day I reply to everybody. And one more thing, if you want to take an appointment with me, I prefer not to refer to fixed receiving hours, because I prefer to use personal appointment by email, And if you ask me, if you send me an email, in most of the cases I will give to you an appointment the same day or one day later. So I prefer this way of managing my relationship with the students. Okay, I will propose to stop now for 15 minutes, okay? And then I will close the lecture at 6:30, okay?
No, tanto lo faccio io, ma a me il caffè sopra il...
Ma stamattina è iniziato per la